There's a lot of people out there right now that don't think that we are on the verge of having another housing crash like we did back in 2008, simply because so many of the variables are different. We don't have all of the risky bad subprime loans. We don't have so many people with adjustable rate mortgages anymore. And we also are not technically in a recession, and we haven't seen official unemployment numbers jump to the level that they were back then, because unemployment made it up to 10% during the 2008 housing market crash. And for all those reasons, a lot of people think that nothing like that is going to happen this time around. But I beg to differ, because there's a lot of things that we can look at that, even though are not the same thing as last time, we're seeing different warning signs flash this time around that are just as bad. There's three things that we need to look at right now that are fundamental in shaping this next housing crash. There's interest rates, there are wages, and consumer confidence. Those are going to be the things that are going to drag down the economy and ultimately the housing market this time around. The low interest rates that we've had for the past 20 years have artificially inflated demand, have also artificially inflated prices of real estate, and it has suppressed supply because a lot of people don't want to give up their low interest rate that they were able to lock in over the past few years. When interest rates rise, the opposite is supposed to happen, and buyers start backing out of contracts like we're seeing right now. Sellers start to panic and put their homes on the market for fear of home prices coming down, which is something we're already seeing happen right now. And the inventory starts to pile up. And inventory on the U.S. housing market is already back to pre-pandemic levels, and in some cities across the country is now exceeding pre-pandemic levels. And if we look throughout history, we can see different examples of how different policies made the economy take a turn for the worse and also brought the housing market with it. In the 1980s, when Paul Volcker was the Fed chair, they had to raise interest rates to above 17%, which led to a sharp decline in home values back then. Nothing like we saw during the 2008 housing crisis, but it did have an impact. Then in the late 80s and early 90s, we had the savings and loan crisis, where deregulation and risky lending left a lot of institutions bankrupt and homeowners underwater. Not quite a housing crash, but a downturn for sure. And then in 2008 was obviously the worst situation that we have had since the Great Depression, where easy credit and poor lending standards and speculative buying caused a global financial meltdown and caused home prices to drop as much as 50% in certain places across the country. And now fast forward to today, we have the pandemic boom and now the pandemic bust that is just beginning. We saw interest rates drop to zero from the Fed, which led people to a situation where they could get mortgages as low as 2.5% during the pandemic. And this was also at a time when prices still weren't off the charts yet, and it caused an absolute frenzy to the point where it pushed prices far, far above where they should be, because these low interest rates were combined with inflation and a $6 trillion injection of cash into the United States economy that we are still feeling the ripple effects from today, 5 years later. And even though prices have started to come down, they have not come down by nearly enough to reverse a lot of these gains that housing has seen from inflation. And like I've mentioned in past videos, I don't think we're ever going to see prices come back down to where they were before the pandemic, at least not monetarily speaking. When adjusted for inflation, maybe it's possible. Because one thing I explained in a video about a week ago, which I want to just recap on right now, is say you have a house that was worth $250,000 before the pandemic, right? And then it shot up to $400,000 in value. That's a pretty common scenario a lot of people have seen. So then you saw home prices go up by 40% in that scenario. But home prices now only need to fall by 20% because the increases were so great. Because if home prices were to fall by 20%, that would bring that $400,000 house down to $320,000, which you say, Michael, that's still more than the $250,000 it was before the pandemic. But when adjusted for inflation, it's roughly about the same, because $250,000 is the new $320,000 because of inflation. That's the part of the puzzle that people need to understand. And that's never going to go away because the government doesn't want deflation. So the things we need to watch moving forward that are likely going to be catalysts of this next housing crash are going to be mortgage debt service ratios. When homeowners begin spending too much of their monthly income on mortgage payments, the risk of default and broader correction goes up. This is something I literally just talked about in another video. FHA borrowers are seeing delinquencies rise due to higher insurance premiums, due to the higher cost of maintaining a home. And for these FHA borrowers looking to get a loan, some lenders will give you a loan up to a 45 or even 50% debt to income ratio, which is completely wrong. This should never happen, but it happens every day. And then the biggest factor in terms of prices being forced down is the wages versus price growth. I did an entire video the other day showing you guys how wages have not kept up with inflation for at least the past 20 years, but probably much longer. And when home prices outpace wage growth, the affordability declines and the demand dries up. That's leading us to the situation we're in right now. Another thing to take a look at is lending practices. You know, when there's a rise in the risky type of loans like adjustable rate mortgages, subprime mortgages, or zero down financing, this shows you that the market's overheated and these lenders are using their tools of last resort to get people to sign up and take a mortgage. And we are seeing all of the above happen right now. And I'm not saying that conditions are dire everywhere and everywhere is on the verge of collapse and on the verge of seeing a massive housing market crash, but some places have already crashed, like Austin, Texas. There are places in Florida, in Southwest Florida in particular, that have already halfway crashed. And there's many other metros across the country that are just in the beginning phases of their crash. So it is happening right now all around us in probably at least half of the United States right now. So all you can really do is to protect yourself during these uncertain times and make sure you're not going to become a victim of any of these things. So what can you do? Well, the number one thing you have to do if you don't want to become a victim is to buy within your means, guys. And this is what I was talking about in my video the other day. If you don't have 6 months of cash reserves, if you don't have a solid income, you shouldn't be buying a house. Forget about the 0% down or 3.5% down stuff and having no money left over in the bank after you purchase. That is a recipe for disaster for any new homeowner. Trust me. That's why the delinquencies are skyrocketing right now. Another thing you can do if you're considering buying right now is, if you can afford it and if you have the cash, stick with a fixed rate mortgage. Do a 30-year fixed, do a 15-year fixed, even if you can afford it. And then if rates do come down, and this is with a 20% down payment too, by the way, if rates come down substantially enough in the future, then you can take your opportunity to refinance, but don't count on it. That's just like a bonus if that happens. You need to take a loan that you can afford right now and, okay, I can afford this for the next 30 or 15 years. Forget about the adjustable rate mortgages. A lot of people are going for them right now because the rates are lower, and a lot of lenders and real estate agents are convincing people to take them because it's the only way people can afford the house lately. You also need to have your emergency fund, like I mentioned earlier. 6 months. No negotiations, guys. Some people say 3. No. If you're going to be a homeowner, it needs to be 6 months. Because not only you have to back up your own personal finances, but you got to have a little extra in case there's some unexpected problems that come up with your property, which are going to happen at some point. You also want to be diversified. You don't want your entire net worth tied to your home purchase. Make sure you have some stocks, some gold and silver, Bitcoin, other things as well. And especially if you're buying right now, you need to be prepared for the worst, meaning that expenses to own the home will continue to rise. At the same time, the value of your home might continue to go down for the next several years. That's the worst case scenario that you should be planning for right now, and realistically is probably what's on the horizon for many. And we know that's where things are headed because all we got to do is look at the home builders, okay? And the home builders are slashing prices at the highest rate than they have in 3 years. And this is according to the National Association of Home Builders. This isn't me just saying this or just looking at some weird headline from the internet. This is according to the National Association of Home Builders that this is what they are doing. Now think about this. According to the Builder Confidence Survey, any reading that comes in below 50 is considered negative sentiment on the home building market. Well, in July, their sentiment reading came in at 33. Not great. 1 year ago in July of 2024, the index was at 41. So builder confidence has been on the steady decline for over a year now. In fact, it has been in negative territory for the last 15 straight months. And this is why 38% of home builders cut their prices in July, which is the highest amount since the National Association of Home Builders began tracking it back in 2022. So they haven't been tracking it for very long, obviously, but still already hitting a record in the first 3 years is pretty crazy. And I've kind of gone over a little bit of these stats before, but the average price drop in July was 5%. And some people will say, well, that's not very much, Michael, but think about it. These builders have been lowering prices for quite some time, and I've showed you guys some real examples of these price cuts where they're lowering the price of homes 15, 20, sometimes 25% cumulatively to get these homes sold. They have also been buying down mortgage rates to help get buyers through the door, which has cut into their profit margins, but not as much as the price cuts. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about property taxes. There was a story that one of my viewers, Tony, sent to me about property taxes in Texas and just how much they have gone up, especially for somebody that inherited a house over there. Take a look at this. Here's a woman who inherited her childhood home in North Houston, Texas, after her father and stepmother passed away. She found out after she inherited the property that they owed $35,000 in back property taxes, including $12,000 in interest, because the taxes had not been paid while her stepmother was ill. Now, this woman who inherited the house, she is a single mother and she is a first-time homeowner, so not starting out with the greatest experience. She said that she's already paid $10,000 and she's on a 3-year payment plan to avoid losing the home. And because she's a first-time homeowner who just inherited the property, she had no clue and never heard of the homestead exemption, which could have actually significantly reduced her property tax bill earlier. Once she applied for the homestead exemption, her property tax bill did go down a little bit. But this is something you should look at if you're a first-time home buyer, guys. In any state, most states have some sort of a homestead exemption in order to lower your property tax bill if you are an owner-occupant of the property. So always make sure you look into that before you decide to buy. And this is also why I partner up with the company Ownwell. This video is not sponsored, but I always have the link for them down in the description below. For anybody that needs to protest their property taxes and try to get their property taxes lowered, I highly recommend checking them out. And I always have that link down in the description. But the state of Texas is known for having some of the highest property tax bills in the nation, right behind states like New Jersey and Illinois. And Texas is another state that has no income taxes like Florida, and they place most of the taxing burden on homeowners. Like, for example, somebody who might only be making $35,000 a year in Texas might have a $5,000 a year property tax bill where 1/7 of their income is going towards paying property taxes, not to mention all the other taxes you have to pay, sales taxes and taxes on utilities, whatever. While a millionaire, say they might have a $20,000 a year tax bill, are seeing a much lower portion of their income going towards the tax. So these taxes always disproportionately hit lower income homeowners the hardest. And really, after hearing this, it just reminds me of two things. Number one, that most of the time when somebody inherits a house, they usually end up selling the house because they can't afford to keep it. In this case, this woman's holding on, and it was probably her only shot at becoming a homeowner, especially as a single mother. So getting on the payment plan to pay off the property taxes is probably a whole lot cheaper than trying to buy a house from scratch if she has nothing saved up. But just like we talked about before, one financial hiccup could put her in a position where she could end up losing this house if she's not financially ready to hold on to it. It also is a reminder, because she didn't know about the homestead exemption, about just how uneducated a lot of new home buyers are to the process. People hear from financial gurus or from family that the only way to get ahead in life is you need to own a house, and if you don't, you're a complete loser and you're never going to have anything. And it gives people a lot of FOMO. They see the news headlines about prices going higher and inventory shortages that don't exist anymore. And it pushes people into making bad decisions without doing a whole lot of research up front. And that's why I consider my channel to be that outlet for people who are looking to do this. You know, I put together these videos 100% free, guys. All you got to do is watch it and learn from it. Hear these stories, hear what other people have done, learn from their mistakes so that way you don't make them yourself. But some people refuse to listen just because they say, oh, well, this is doom and gloom. I'm tired of hearing all the bad news, Michael. Well, guess what? A lot of people who have heard the bad news have saved thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars by not making bad financial decisions and are much better off now because of it. So this is just my method of teaching. This is how I like to teach people what to do and what not to do, by sharing stories and experiences of people who have already done something wrong and showing you how you can not fall into those same cracks. And there's no reason to hurry, guys, because the housing market is drastically shifting towards buyers' favor right now. Active home listings are up 29% year over year. Homes are sitting on the market on average of 53 days right now. And we're seeing a situation where we have 15 straight months of slower sales volume. So more and more people are just saying no to buying a house right now. It's a good time to kind of wait and see what happens, put your finances together, save that emergency fund, and get your income in order and increase your income. Even housing market bulls, people who have been saying there's no way the housing market's going to crash, are changing their tune. Most notably, Mark Zandi from Moody's. I have quoted him several times in the past talking about how nothing's wrong with the housing market, everything's fine, and buyer demand is stronger than ever. Well, he recently posted on X saying that home sales are already uber depressed. And he's talking about how the housing market is flashing bright red warning signs now. Wow. So even people like him are starting to change his tune once all of this downward data is starting to come out. And it's not just the housing market taking a hit, guys. It's the entire economy, because without the home sales happening, a lot of other things suffer. Appliance sales suffer, furniture sales suffer, real estate agents and home inspectors, home builders are suffering. Lots of different sectors of the economy are feeling the heat right now. Even homeowners that are locked in with the low interest rates are starting to buckle in some cases because of the higher property taxes and the higher homeowners insurance. In fact, we could be entering a situation where this is actually the worst housing market in American history. So only time will tell. We'll have to keep an eye on it. And of course, I'll be here every step of the way to keep you guys posted. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.